In the quiet suburb of Millfield, where rows of identical houses stood like sentinels against the mundane, lived Adam Mercer. At 31, he occupied the precarious threshold between youthful indiscretion and the weighted responsibility of adulthood. His life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, a mid-level accounting position at Pinnacle Industries, a modest apartment that caught the morning sun, and enough disposable income to occasionally indulge in small luxuries. It was a life of perfect mediocrity, neither remarkable nor regrettable, until a single decision shattered the delicate balance he had constructed. The idea came to him on a Tuesday afternoon as rain pelted against the windows of Pinnacle's office building. Adam had been reviewing the company's quarterly financial statements when he discovered a discrepancy in the accounting system, a flaw that rendered the company's safe temporarily vulnerable. The revelation should have prompted an immediate report to his superiors, but instead it awakened something dormant within him, a hunger for more than the life he had settled for, a desperate desire to escape the suffocating predictability of his existence. That night, as the office emptied and the cleaning staff began their nightly ritual, Adam remained, ostensibly to complete an urgent project. His heart hammered against his ribs as he made his way to the financial department where the safe stood, an imposing steel structure that held the company's emergency funds. Using the security flaw he had discovered, Adam bypassed the electronic lock. The safe door swung open with surprising ease, revealing stacks of cash, $487,000 in total, meant for emergency operations and payroll backup. Adam had come prepared. He transferred the money into a nondescript duffel bag, his movements precise despite the tremor in his hands. As he zipped the bag closed, a momentary hesitation gripped him, a fleeting moral reckoning quickly silenced by rationalization. He wasn't taking everything, he told himself. Pinnacle Industries was a Fortune 500 company. They would recover. This was his chance at a different life, one where he controlled the variables. He left through a service entrance, careful to avoid the security cameras he knew were monitored only intermittently. The weight of the duffel bag seemed to increase with each step, as though the physical burden of his crime was manifesting in real time. By the time he reached his apartment and secured the money beneath the floorboards under his bed, Adam was drenched in sweat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The morning brought with it the first wave of consequences. Adam awoke to news alerts on his phone. Pinnacle Industries had reported a significant theft overnight. The police were investigating, and the company had offered a substantial reward for information leading to the recovery of the funds. Adam called in sick, unable to face his colleagues, unable to maintain the facade of innocence he would need to cultivate. By evening, the story had escalated. Local news stations featured interviews with Pinnacle executives who detailed the impact of the theft on the company's operations and employee trust. Adam watched, transfixed, as his anonymous crime became the focus of public outrage. Social media erupted with speculation and condemnation, users competing to suggest the most fitting punishment for the unknown perpetrator. The first nightmare came that night. Adam found himself back in the Pinnacle office, attempting to return the money, only to discover the safe had been replaced by a bottomless pit. As he peered into its depths, unseen hands pushed him forward, and he plummeted endlessly, the sensation of falling jolting him awake at 3 a.m. He lay there, heart racing, sheets soaked with perspiration, listening to the silence of his apartment and the distant sound of traffic, ordinary noises that now seemed to carry accusation in their mundanity. Days passed, and Adam forced himself to return to work. The office had transformed. Security personnel patrolled the corridors, new surveillance cameras had been installed, and employees were required to submit to bag checks upon entry and exit. The atmosphere was tense, collaborative camaraderie replaced by suspicion and whispered theories about the identity of the thief. Adam performed his duties mechanically, avoiding eye contact, minimizing conversation. His performance began to suffer as sleepless nights accumulated. The nightmares evolved, becoming more elaborate and terrifying. In one recurring dream, he stood before an audience of his colleagues as invisible hands emptied his pockets, producing evidence of his guilt, while a faceless prosecutor detailed his crime with meticulous accuracy. The investigation intensified. The FBI became involved, reviewing security footage and interviewing employees. Adam's supervisor noted his decline in performance and uncharacteristic behavior, scheduling a performance review that resulted in a formal warning. The money, hidden beneath his floorboards, seemed to emit an energy that permeated his apartment, a constant reminder of his betrayal. 2 weeks after the theft, the local newspaper published an article featuring psychological profiles of potential suspects. The criminal, according to experts consulted for the piece, would likely be experiencing significant stress, changes in behavior, and possibly insomnia or nightmares. Adam read the article 3 times, each word seeming to point directly at him, as though the newspaper itself was an accusatory finger. His apartment, once a sanctuary, became a prison. The stolen money, which he had not spent a single dollar of, haunted him like a malevolent entity. Adam developed rituals to check that his hiding place remained secure, sometimes waking multiple times during the night to confirm the money was still there, untouched, undiscovered. The nightmares worsened. In one particularly vivid dream, Adam returned to his apartment to find it ransacked, the floorboards torn up, and police officers waiting with handcuffs. In another, he stood in a courtroom as former friends and colleagues testified against him, their faces distorted with disgust. He would wake gasping, sometimes crying out, the line between dream and reality increasingly blurred. Adam's professional decline continued. Tasks that once came naturally now required immense concentration. He missed deadlines, made computational errors, and during a crucial presentation to senior management, experienced a panic attack that left him unable to complete his report. His previously cordial relationship with colleagues deteriorated as his erratic behavior and constant fatigue made him irritable and withdrawn. The inevitable came 6 weeks after the theft. Adam was called into his director's office where, with clinical detachment, he was informed that his services were no longer required. His recent performance did not meet Pinnacle's standards, and his position was being terminated, effective immediately. As security escorted him from the building, Adam felt the eyes of his former colleagues following him, some curious, others pitying, a few perhaps suspicious. Unemployment added financial pressure to Adam's already overwhelming psychological burden. The irony was not lost on him. Nearly $500,000 lay hidden in his apartment, yet he found himself counting pennies, afraid to access the stolen funds. He applied half-heartedly for positions similar to the one he had lost, but interviews were disastrous affairs. Dark circles beneath his eyes, an inability to focus, and the constant fear of discovery rendered him incapable of presenting himself as a viable candidate. His social life, never particularly robust, collapsed entirely. Friends who reached out were met with excuses until eventually they stopped trying. Adam's world contracted to the confines of his apartment, where he spent hours staring at the spot where the money lay hidden, contemplating the sequence of decisions that had led to his current state of isolation and despair. 3 months after the theft, Adam experienced a dream that would alter his course. Unlike the chaotic terror of his previous nightmares, this one possessed an eerie clarity. He found himself standing in a vast empty room, its boundaries lost in shadow. Before him stood a figure, indistinct except for its eyes, which held a knowing that transcended ordinary perception. Your life bleeds away, the figure spoke, its voice neither male nor female but somehow familiar, as though Adam was hearing his own thoughts externally articulated. Each day, you die a little more. The weight you carry cannot be borne indefinitely. I can't return it, Adam responded in the dream. They'll know it was me. There are ways, the figure said, moving closer, its features still obscured. There are always ways for those truly seeking redemption, but know this, the path back to yourself requires restitution. The money must be returned for your life to resume. Adam woke with a start, but without the usual racing heart and cold sweat. A profound stillness had settled over him, a clarity that had been absent since the moment he first considered the theft. He rose from bed and moved to the window, looking out at the pre-dawn street below. Across from his apartment stood an abandoned office building, its windows boarded, a faded "For Lease" sign hanging limply on its facade. The building had been vacant for as long as Adam had lived in the apartment, a failed development project halted by economic downturn and zoning disputes. It stood as a monument to unrealized potential, not unlike Adam himself. As he gazed at its derelict form, illuminated by the first hints of sunrise, an idea began to crystallize. Over the next few days, Adam observed the abandoned building with new interest. He noted the occasional security patrol that passed by but never entered, the teenagers who sometimes gathered near its rear entrance to smoke and then dispersed, the general indifference with which the neighborhood regarded the structure. Most importantly, he confirmed his suspicion that while the building's main entrances were secured, a service door on its eastern side had a lock that had long since ceased to function properly. Adam formulated his plan methodically, with an attention to detail that had once made him a valued employee. He would need to act under cover of darkness, ensure no witnesses, and create a scenario that would justify the discovery of the money without implicating himself. The anonymous tip would be the final piece, a mysterious informant directing authorities to the abandoned building, a civic-minded individual who wished to remain unnamed. The timing had to be perfect. Adam chose a Tuesday night, when the street was typically deserted and the security patrol passed by the abandoned building at predictable intervals. At 2:17 a.m., dressed in nondescript dark clothing, he retrieved the duffel bag from beneath his floorboards. The money inside was exactly as he had left it, untouched, unused, $487,000 that had cost him everything yet provided nothing. Crossing the street to the abandoned building, Adam felt oddly exposed despite the darkness. Every sound, the distant siren, the rustle of trees in the night breeze, seemed magnified, potentially alerting an unseen observer to his presence. He reached the service door and found it as he expected, the lock easily manipulated with minimal force. The door swung inward with a groan that seemed to echo through the empty building. The interior was a labyrinth of half-constructed office spaces, exposed wiring, and discarded construction materials. Using the flashlight function on a burner phone purchased specifically for this purpose, Adam navigated to what appeared to be a central location, a former reception area with a partially completed front desk. He positioned the duffel bag prominently, ensuring it would be easily discovered yet appear as though someone had hastily concealed it. Before leaving, Adam took one final look at the bag containing the money that had derailed his life. For a moment, temptation resurged. He could still change his mind, retrieve the funds, perhaps leave town, assume a new identity. But the memory of sleepless nights, of isolation and paranoia, of the gradual disintegration of his former self, strengthened his resolve. He turned away from the bag and retraced his steps to the service entrance, slipping back into the night undetected. The second phase of his plan required a different kind of anonymity. Using the same burner phone, Adam crafted a message to the local newspaper, careful to use generalized language that couldn't be traced back to him. He described the location of the stolen Pinnacle Industries funds in the abandoned building, claiming to be a concerned citizen who had observed suspicious activity in the area and subsequently discovered the money. The message was sent via a temporary email account created through a VPN, with every digital footprint methodically obscured. By dawn, Adam had disposed of the burner phone and returned to his apartment, where he watched through his window as the first police vehicles arrived at the abandoned building. They were followed by news vans, curious onlookers, and eventually executives from Pinnacle Industries. The scene unfolded like a surreal play, investigators entering the building, emerging with the duffel bag, the buzz of excitement spreading through the gathered crowd. Throughout the day, Adam monitored news coverage from his apartment. The recovery of the stolen funds dominated local headlines, with reporters speculating about the mysterious tipster and why the thief had abandoned the money. Theories ranged from a crisis of conscience to fear of imminent capture. Adam watched it all with detached fascination, as though observing a story in which he played no part. That night, for the first time in months, Adam slept without interruption. No nightmares plagued him, no phantom sounds woke him from fitful slumber. He awoke the next morning feeling something close to peace, not happiness perhaps, but the absence of the crushing anxiety that had become his constant companion. In the weeks that followed, Adam noticed gradual but significant changes. The dark circles beneath his eyes faded. His appetite returned. He found himself able to concentrate on tasks that had previously seemed insurmountable. Most notably, he began to reimagine his future, not as an unrealistic fantasy fueled by stolen funds, but as a deliberate reconstruction of what he had lost. He applied for a position at a smaller accounting firm, one that offered less prestige than Pinnacle, but provided an environment where Adam could rebuild his professional reputation. During the interview, he spoke candidly about his departure from his previous employer, framing it as a valuable learning experience that had prompted personal growth and renewed dedication to his career. Whether due to his technical qualifications or the earnest sincerity he now projected, Adam was offered the position. The story of the Pinnacle theft gradually faded from public interest, replaced by newer scandals and sensations. Occasionally, Adam would encounter references to it, a passing comment from a colleague, a retrospective news piece on corporate security, but these mentions no longer triggered the visceral panic they once had. The incident had transformed from an immediate threat to a cautionary tale, one that Adam carried within him as both warning and redemption. 1 year after the theft, Adam stood at his apartment window, gazing at the abandoned building across the street. Construction crews had arrived that morning, the property finally sold to developers who planned to convert it into mixed-use retail and residential space. As the workers began dismantling the boarded windows and clearing debris, Adam watched with a peculiar sense of symmetry. The building that had briefly housed his guilt was being given new purpose, just as he had reclaimed his own life from the wreckage of a single misguided decision. That night, Adam dreamed again of the mysterious figure, but the encounter lacked the ominous quality of their previous meeting. They stood together in the same vast room, but now light filtered in from unseen sources, illuminating corners previously shrouded in darkness. "You found your way back," the figure said, its features still indistinct but somehow warmer, more approachable. "I didn't think it would be possible," Adam replied. "The path to redemption is never closed to those who truly seek it," the figure said, beginning to fade. "Remember this. The greatest prison is the one we build ourselves, but we also hold the key to its door." Adam woke with the figure's words echoing in his mind. Outside his window, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in hues of promise. The abandoned building stood partially dismantled, its transformation already underway. Adam watched the play of light against its weathered facade and felt, for the first time in longer than he could remember, a sense of possibility unfettered by the past. He had lost much: a prestigious position, financial security, months of his life consumed by fear and regret. But in returning what was never his to take, Adam had reclaimed something far more valuable: the ability to look at his reflection without flinching, to sleep without the specter of guilt invading his dreams, to imagine a future built on honest effort rather than ill-gotten gain. As he prepared for another workday, Adam glanced once more at the building across the street. Construction workers were arriving, their voices carrying through the morning air. Ordinary people beginning an ordinary day, unaware of the silent drama that had played out within those derelict walls. Adam smiled slightly, sensing that his own reconstruction, though less visible, was equally profound. The weight he had carried for so long had finally been set down, allowing him to stand straight again, to move forward unburdened, to breathe deeply, of a life reclaimed.